Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're dialing in from. Welcome to another Dexibit webinar. My name is Angie Judge, and I'm here with the amazing Daniel Jordan, who is our design director at Dexibit. Welcome, Daniel.
Hello.
And great to see everybody today who's dialed in. Thanks for joining us. Today is a very special, very exciting webinar because we have just launched our latest feature, which is called AI Query Assist. And it's the first time that we're using generative AI in Dexibit. So we've had machine learning, natural language features in our product for a while, but this is our first time using generative AI in the product. So I'm really, really thrilled to share it with you. And I'm really looking forward to, Daniel, hearing all of your expert tips and tricks on writing great prompts and getting the most out of this feature, because it is something that there's a real knack to be able to use generative AI at an expert level. So I'm really looking forward to learning all of that from you. So to begin with, for those that are new here, Dexibit does big data analytics for visitor attractions. We work with both cultural and commercial locations, and we help bring together all sorts of data from different systems around the visitor touch points. So that can be things like footfall and tickets through to location analytics. It can be point of sale, CRM, what people are eating in the cafe, buying in the shops, things that are happening on social media or websites, reviews, third-party data sources like weather and all sorts of other things. So we bring all of that together for both data consumers and analysts alike into dashboards, reports, insights, and forecasts. I'm going to take you on a very, very quick housekeeping tour just for everybody who's new here today. Hopefully you can see my product there and not my Facebook. And here is Dexibit. It is a software as a service. Those customers with paid accounts with us can invite as many users as they like. So it's designed to democratize data for your teams. And here you can see you can add as many dashboards as you like. You can share those dashboards with your teams. You can create really complex account structures for how you want to share with teams if you've got lots of multiple locations, for example. You can turn them into scheduled email reports. This is really great for pushing data out to your teams to, again, help with that democratizing data mission. And in Dexibit, there's a huge library of visualizations. So if you want to add one to your dashboard, you can simply search for the topic you're looking for and click add to add them in. And this is an example dashboard in Dexibit, so you can see lots of different data from different data sources, in this case from multiple locations, coming together in different ways to help me get everything from very high level data right through to the very detailed. Here we're looking at the top 5 products I'm selling in store and the top 3 sales reps for each of those products. So getting right down to that level of detail. And you'll see here DxQL, a special query language that we've developed specifically for visitor attractions to get the most out of their data. Here we're looking at products about penguins. And this is the bit where Daniel is going to show us how to transform plain text, plain English, questions, etc., into DxQL using generative AI. So I'll stop sharing my screen there. And Daniel, perhaps you could start us off by explaining to us, what is generative AI?
Yeah. So as you mentioned earlier, in the product, we've had different AI features for some time in our product. And the kind of most obvious one is the forecasting that we provide. And that's the type of AI that uses machine learning. So it takes existing data, uses algorithms to predict values into the future based on a number of different factors. So we have kind of AI there and have done for many years. It can also be used, AI can be used for classifying natural language data. And so one of the things that we've been doing is taking review content from our customers' reviews and using natural language generation to kind of analyze those reviews and apply different sentiments or emotions to those, And we've done that in the products in a number of different ways, but most recently we've been using generative AI to kind of understand those reviews a little bit better, and provide, much more insight in terms of emotion and key phrases, key sentiments, that sort of thing. And finally, what I want to show you today is using generative AI to make it easier to use the functions in our app. So how can we use generative AI to make it easier to use DxQL and interact with data? And so I should explain what generative AI is. I imagine many people are familiar with it now, but generative AI is to use a huge data set. So, many trillions of pages of the internet, many trillions of words, all collected together, and using mathematics to predict the probability of what word basically comes next in a sentence. And the application of that, certainly in the last year and a half or so, has rapidly improved, so that with the quality of what these generative models are predicting has appeared, at least, to sort of evolve startlingly fast. And the quality of what it outputs is to a point where we can start to build it into the software products that we build, and make really useful products from it. So yeah.
Very cool. And I know I've been using ChatGPT in a lot of my regular life, both for work and outside of it. And it is very handy in some small ways that I sort of was thinking about it doing big tasks. And I don't think I've used it for doing any big tasks yet, but it's certainly really handy for all of those little tiny tasks where it can add value. But keeping that in mind, what are some of the things that we should be aware of, or users should be aware of, when they're working with a probabilistic product, as we call them?
Yeah. So I think, if you've used any of these technologies, you'll already know that they're extremely good at writing really convincing responses to questions. And I think probably maybe what surprised us is it's not just the simple questions that you can ask it and receive kind of simple answers. You can ask some really deeply technical questions about some really niche topics, and get really, really good answers back from them. So I spent like a small amount of my time writing some code, and you can ask, ChatGPT to write you some code that, for me would take maybe some hours and some very hard thought work, and it can write out that code on the screen in seconds, which is a little bit frightening, but it's also really exciting as to sort of, the accuracy and the speed at which you can kind of return these sorts of things. But kind of the downside of this is that there's a few things to think about in terms of implementing it, I guess, for us as makers of software. The first thing is that the outcome each time you ask a question, and you can ask the same question and get two different responses, or the response comes in two different ways, unless you give it a very, very narrow frame of reference. So for us, as kind of builders of products, we want to be able to guarantee that when you interact with anything that we build, the quality of what it puts back is, the best that we can give, and that the answers are somewhat accurate every time that you use it. So that can be tricky to figure out. And the other thing, and I think this is important for us because we deal every day with data, is that LLMs are great at language, but they're not so great at sort of mathematical problems, or at least not yet. And so there are workarounds for figuring out how to make LLMs solve mathematical problems. But it means that you can't just paste in a file of, a CSV file or a spreadsheet of numbers and expect to get some useful insights back from it, because those insights might not be as accurate as you might wish. And when you're dealing with data, you want everything to be very accurate, right? The other thing to be concerned about is that LLMs, generative AI, can often hallucinate answers when it doesn't exactly know the answer. So it will kind of make something up for you, and it's very hard to identify what is a hallucination, what has it made up for you, because the answers that it gives back are often so convincing that you maybe don't notice. And I was trying to remember an example of a hallucination that I've had. And even though it's given me back some wrong answers, which I guess is an example of a hallucination, there may have been some things there that are incorrect that it's given me back that I just haven't noticed because it's within the context of a really convincing answer. And so that can be really concerning, I suppose. And so we want to build a product that kind of limits or eradicates that kind of error as much as possible. So yeah, as I said, we try to scope what our product does in order to minimize these drawbacks. And yeah, what I'll show you is sort of how we've taken the technology of generative AI and large language models and implemented it in our product in what we think is a safe way.
Sounds like a very good segue into taking a look at this feature.
Yeah, cool. All right, so I'm just going to bring up my screen here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a typical dashboard that you might use, and then I'm going to take you through some examples of different prompts that you might put into the filter box in order to get some useful responses. Right? So I'm looking at a dashboard that I've made, and we've got a few different charts here that deal with different data sets within our product. And what I can do is I can click on edit on this particular chart, and you can see I've got various different things set up to display this chart. But what I'm mostly focused on in this demo is this filter box. And this filter box takes a DxQL expression, which is essentially very similar to SQL, if you're familiar with SQL. And it's used to filter the data that's within the chart. And so it's the part of a SQL statement, if you're familiar with SQL, that comes after the where statement. So we're choosing what data to include or exclude from this data set. This chart is looking at reviews and the distribution of star ratings of reviews from, say, something like Google reviews. And you can see here, 32% of my reviews are 4-star reviews, right? But if I want to filter down this chart, and maybe I only want to see reviews that have more than 3 stars, I can simply type in here more than 3 stars. Click on this button here to use the query assist, and it's going to convert this natural language into a valid DxQL expression that we can use with the data. So you can see here, even though I said more than 3 stars, it knows that the attribute that it wants to grab is rating, where the star ratings are kept. And then it's converted it in the more than into a logical expression here using the greater than symbol to show ratings are greater than 3 stars. The other useful thing it can do is it can fix up syntax. So if you're entering a DxQL expression and for whatever reason it's not right, you can use this query assist to fix up the expression. So if I put something in here that I know is wrong, if I want to say greater than equals to 3, really the equal sign should be on the other side of this little chevron thing here. And so that's going to break if I enter it in here, but I can use this wand to quickly fix up the error, and it's going to put the equal sign on the other side. So if you're writing a long expression or yeah, you've got something wrong, you can use the wand to fix up any errors. And it works on a number of different logical expressions that we have in DxQL. So we could just say 5-star reviews if we want. And it's going to turn that into a valid query expression. which is really cool. So those are sort of logical operators sort of things, but it's also really good at dealing with text and converting text into some useful queries, right? So here's a chart that shows the retail products that I've sold. And along here, you can see all the different names of the products and the quantity that I've sold of these. And so if I click on edit and find the filter box over here, I can start to filter out some of these products. So for instance, I can write in here products that mention birds. And so what it's going to do is attempt to filter all the product names to find products that mention birds in some way. And because we provide the language model with a sample of the data that you have here, it's going to be able to take things that are like birds as well and include it in the filter. Let's see what it brings back. So you can see it in the filter, just while the data loads, it's looking for product names that that are like penguin or the product names like penguins, right? So it's looked in there, it knows that it's looking for birds, but it's picked out penguins to pull back. If we go back to reviews, I can show you a couple of other things that you can do in a similar vein, right? So we might want to have a look at reviews that are related to a particular subject. So maybe, so the review content is stored in a different column over here. It's stored in review. And we can use the filter box to filter things that are not presented on the chart itself. So I could search for reviews that mention food in some way. And it's going to use its knowledge of the industry and some contextual information that we've provided the language model in order to pull out reviews that are related to food, particularly within our visitor attraction industry. And so it's going to look for things like food, but it also knows to look for things like drink, cafe, snack, meal, various different things. And we can get a view of the average star ratings for things related to food. And as I say, we've provided it with context about the visitor attraction industry so that it kind of recognizes familiar terms to us. So for instance, we could say that over here, we could say reviews that mention F&B, food and beverage. By providing it with that, it also knows F&B, that means food and beverage. Let's have a look for things that are related to food. And it should provide back a similar query that when I put in food, which is really cool. Another thing I like is that it can also provide context about the world around us as well. So for instance, when we're looking at the origin of where our visitors came from, you can see I've got a pie chart here that breaks down the different states that the visitors have come from. And we can put in some really interesting prompts here for the query assist. So for instance, we could ask for states that are on the border of Mexico. And it's going to use the large language model's knowledge about the world in order to figure out which states border with Mexico, and then convert that into the data that you have, figure out the right column that knows, which state, and then filter that way, which I think is really cool. We also don't need to mention state at all, right? So we could also say visitors from New England, and it's going to convert that into something relevant as well, right? And then finally, another good example is it's very forgiving of spelling mistakes as well. So I can write in states bordering South Dakota and spell South Dakota wrong. It's going to very quickly figure out what those states are and bring back the right filter. One other thing is that it knows specifically how DxQL syntax works. And DxQL works a lot like SQL, but it also has some additional functions on top of SQL to make life easier for us. And so one of the things we can do over here, I've got a chart that shows the average party size of visitors to my visitor attraction. And we can have a look for things like tickets scheduled on Mondays. And that's going to bring me back some very specific DxQL syntax just to help me figure out how that works. That saves me the task of having a look in the documentation to find out how best to write the syntax. And so this is showing me the average party size of people that visit on a Monday. I can also do something similar, like tickets scheduled on a weekend. And that's going to know to convert weekends to Saturday and Sunday. And it's going to use the right expression here. It's using in here to choose for Saturdays and Sundays. So there's loads of things that you can do with these DxQL expressions. And I think there's a few sort of tips that I like to give just to help you along the way here. I think the key thing for now is to remember that all that this query assist is doing is helping you filter the data. So if I was to ask it, what's my top selling products for the last year, it's going to have an attempt at trying to filter that data, but unless you've configured the visualization so that it's showing you products and you've filtered the, you've set the dates correctly and the granularity of the dates, it's not going to show you exactly what you're after. So it's only really dealing with the filter. It's not going to set up the entire toolbox for you, at least yet. The other thing to mention is that it's very, it's worth checking what the query assist provides back to you. So take a look at the DxQL that it provides and make sure it's exactly what you're after. Because we sort of feel like this tool should aid you in what you're doing and not doing the work for you. And I think it's definitely worth using the DxQL to sort of validate, is what I've asked for correct? And if it doesn't quite give you what you're after, I thoroughly recommend having a couple of attempts at like rephrasing what you're after, maybe mentioning a specific column over here if it's not giving you the right column, so that it kind of knows quite precisely what you're after. And it might be that it only gets you so far, and then you might have to dive in and modify what precisely you want. If you, for instance, over here, if you wanted to add an extra day, you could do that. And even if you put it in slightly wrong, you could always use it to reprocess what you've got there, and it will fix up any mistakes that you have. And I think the final thing to say is we're upgrading this all the time. And interestingly, upgrading it doesn't look like modifying the code necessarily. It looks like telling it more context about the world, providing it with more examples of what good is and what bad is. And that's going to help it provide more accurate queries. So yeah, please do get in touch if there's certain things that you're trying to do and you're not able to do. We're always interested to hear that. If there are certain examples that you have or if they get stuck on, we'd love to know, because we're upgrading it all the time, providing it with more context, and it should become more powerful over time.
Wowee, Daniel, that was amazing. And I loved seeing some of those examples where it was doing things that I would have to like Google and then validate around sort of the American geography and things. I know there's a few ones that commonly come up for us about certain regions. So having a quick way to get there is really, really cool. And great for us to be able to keep adding into that context that we're giving to our specific model as well, to make it powerful in ways that are important for visitor attractions and our customers specifically. We've got a couple of questions coming in, so we've probably got a minute for one or two of them. And if you're on the call and you'd like to ask anything, feel free to add it to the Q&A. DM us if you'd like, pop it in the chat. Any feedback or comments as well, very welcome. But Daniel, here I've got a question about where this is headed. Like, what is the strategy around generative AI more broadly and Dexibit to come?
Yeah, so we started off with a small and practical example of how we can use large language models within our product. And what we'd like to do now that we've figured out the sort of dynamics of how it all works, we'd like to start to expand this out. So I think one of the next things on our list is to look at, can we use this to create a full query? And maybe that comes in the Data Explorer module that we have. Are we able to get it to generate an entire query to query language based on the question that we might ask? What are the top selling products in the last year? And from that point, I guess the larger vision is we would love to have a product that you can interact with natural language. So you can ask it, create me a bar chart of my top 10 products from the last year, and that it can do all the configuration for us as well. It's certainly feasible that we can do that. And I think that's our vision for our product, is that it requires less interaction and more sort of getting to the data that you're after and the insights that you're after.
Yeah, I know sort of the idea of a point and click experience has been a really big part of our product strategy around democratizing data, and to take that sort of point and click experience into a ask and click experience will just really supercharge that. And another question here, something very specific. I can't see the query box or magic wand in my visualization. What am I doing wrong?
Yeah. So one of the things is that we have these sort of newer visualizations that have the DxQL filter box within them. And so there's a number of visualizations that don't have that and are in the process of being upgraded. So it's likely that if you can't see the wand icon or the filter box, it's one of the older visualizations, but these are in the process of being upgraded, and we're kind of expanding the power of these new sort of new generation of visualizations that have all the functions, many more group bys, many more different ways of interacting with the data. And so it's a case of getting those upgraded so that we can use the full power of DxQL on those too.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to that. We're certainly really expanding the power of Dexibit with this new generation of item and order level data, and then DxQL and all of the other features that come with that. So it's been really exciting to bring that out to everyone. Anything else to add, Daniel, before we wrap up?
I think we're pretty much there. Yeah, I think that's good.
Well, thank you so much. This was an amazing session to learn more about this. I've learned a few tips and tricks to take away to power up my AI query assist usage. So thank you so much for taking us through that. Looking forward to seeing how this and the wider generative AI strategy evolves in our product. And thank you very much for everyone who joined us today.
Thank you.